Hi, I'm David Hamburger, here with another installment of my blog on blues song genealogy, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about Statesboro Blues, in particular the Blind Willie McTell version of Statesboro Blues, basically a solo acoustic guitar accompaniment for a vocal in drop D tuning, which is just taking the low E string down to D, and then the rest of the strings stay the same. Let me just play through a basic 12 bars of this tune with some of the sort of main signature moves intact, and then talk a little bit about what I'm doing and a few other things you can try as using this as a jumping off point. So here we go. Okay, so first, it's in an alternating thumb style, and there's really just a few chord shapes. There's a D, which is the same as an ordinary D, except you have this low string on the bottom now. And so when you're on the D chord, your thumb is just alternating between the 6th and the 4th string. And then for the G, you can't make this G chord because the low string is in the wrong place. So this is a very common G chord to use in this tuning. You're just going to forget about the low string and grab the 2nd fret on the 5th string, and then bring the pinky over to the 3rd fret on the B string, and that leaves you free to do these kind of moves. There's the 7th from a G7 shape. And there's one other D chord, a D7. So you take this standard D7 chord, 2nd fret, 1st fret, 2nd fret, top 3 strings. You leave off the high string, and just when you're making the transition from D to G, you can go to that D7 chord, which sort of telegraphs that you're about to go. Going from the D to the D7 kind of says, and now we're about to go to G, or G7. And you never really hit an A chord, even though it's a blues in D, and you'd think, you know, D, G, and A, 1, 4, and 5. But when it comes time for the turnaround in the 9th bar, you go to just a blues lick over D, and then a little bass horn takes you back to D, and it just sits on D. So it's sort of an object lesson in how even like a super classic 12-bar blues doesn't necessarily follow the exact 12-bar blues form you would expect. So what's happening, and I'll go over this loosely bar by bar, the basic vamp is just to hit the top part of the D chord while the thumb is, every time the thumb is on the low string. So that's a pinch. And you know, a guy like Blind Willie McTell, it's hard to tell on these records, and from never seeing the guy, but it could be picked with a couple of fingers. It could be brushed with the fingers. Guys like Stephen Grossman always talk about how if you're trying to learn stuff by Reverend Gary Davis, like it was all thumb and index finger, no matter how amazing all that ragtime guitar picking sounded. Apparently it was all done just thumb and finger. And supposedly Merle Travis too, doing Cannonball Rag and all that stuff, was just which I find really hard to believe. But then, you know, Django did everything on this hand with 2 fingers, so why not? So, and also like that brushy sound that tends to sound a little more sort of authentic. It's sort of more the vibe of what that stuff sounded like. But Willie McTell was obviously playing some very precise things, so maybe he was a multiple fingers guy. I do not know. I didn't know him, and I never saw him play. So, so on the downbeats, so you're doing what's called a pinch, thumb and fingers together, and then a thumb note in between. And that starts to get syncopated a little bit. Now, when you get those syncopations, if you can sort of read through the tab at all, you just have to look for basically everything in this kind of style is either on the beat or off the beat. And that means it's either pinching with the thumb or you're playing a note in between a thumb note. So in that case, on the beat, off the beat with the finger, and then pinch on the beat again. So if you just repeated a phrase like that, all you're doing is the thumb is going back and forth. On the downbeats with the low string, you're pinching. And then after every upper thumb note on the fourth string, you're following it with an independent note that's being picked on an upbeat on the second string. So and just any idea, no matter how complicated, it's mostly going to break down like that in this style. So when you get to the it's all it all breaks down into variations of that on the beat, off the beat stuff. So when you're on the G chord, your thumb is just rocking between the fifth and the fourth string, and you're just picking out a series of notes. And I would suggest getting comfortable with the bass and then looking at what the melody's doing. And making sure you can do that with your fingers. Keep your thumb like resting on the low string or the fifth string, so that you aren't tempted to get it involved. And make sure that you can pick that melody and then try to put that with the bass and see how it falls over that. So pinch, finger, thumb, finger, pinch. That's one measure. You can just break it down like that. And that's one of the sort of signature licks of the Blind Willie version, or the arrangement. I shouldn't really say version because like he is the version that everybody else is working off of. But the Blind Willie song, one of the key things is one of these licks, which is you're in D, but you're pulling off a blues note from the D, the flat third, which is here's a D minor chord, but it's flat 3 in the context of this D chord. So you're pulling off first fret to open on the high string, then open B and back to third fret on the second string. And that's all happening while you're keeping the bass going. And I tend to move it around so I can get this strong finger and do the pull-off. So you pinch and then pull off. Then we get to the really fun part, which is in bar 9. And it's just all-time classic train whistle blues lick, but broken up over 2 strings. And it's one of those bends where you're like, well, what is that bend? Is it this? How far do you bend? And you bend, it's the official or technical terms, it's a quarter tone bend. So you're sort of, which means like this would be a half step from fret to fret. That would be too bright. You can hear it's too bright and too country sounding. What you want is the sound of the note going kind of crunching up towards that note up to here, but not getting there. And so it's the sound of getting to that note and then disappearing just as you're about to get there by taking your finger off the string. And I admit this is a pain in the neck to do. It's hard to describe, but the sound is not here, and it's not here. You don't come back. So that means you have to get out on your way to that note by taking your finger off. And so what happens is, in super slow motion, you bend up, and you kind of let go, and your finger comes back, muting the string, but still holding on to it. And except for that first pinch, everything's off the beat. So, and then this is the sort of signature thematic stuff continues with this descending bass line. And that's easy because there's no moving parts except, I mean, it's just a bass line, no alternating things. So he's singing and playing, but nothing weird is happening with the finger. So little quarter tone bend there too. Same sound. That's one more real distinctive part of the Blind Willie thing, which is that lick comes up over and over in the course of the song. So the notes are just slide. So all the pieces put together, just the chording stuff at the beginning. Oh, sorry. There it is. D7 chord, G, going up. And one kind of curious thing about the recording, the original version of it, is that it starts off with this very sort of slow, relaxed, kind of reflects the whole sort of like early morning thing. But if you skip around in the recording, which you can do now with digital recordings, or if you have a record you can drop the needle, but it gets a lot faster by the end of the song. So what starts off with this very relaxed pace, by the end is it's funny because it seems like most people who play it as an acoustic solo piece tend to play it at that kind of faster tempo. But anyway, just sort of interesting. And verse by verse, Blind Willie Mattel takes great care to sort of vary it. 'Cause like I said, there's no solo really. There's just, it's like a lot of those early blues songs, or a lot of even like 50s stuff. Like you listen to Howlin' Wolf play Little Red Rooster, there's no guitar solo. There's like a little intro, and then there's 3 verses, and with some fills, and then it's over. And there's no like wee, 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 wee. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I'm just saying it's interesting. It's interesting to me going back and really not having taken this tune really apart very much previously, to go back and listen to something that's such an iconic tune and find out that it's, like many of those tunes, it's a song. It's got a bunch of vocals and the guitars that come from it, and that's just kind of fascinating to me. But the way that Blind Willie Mattel does some building throughout the song with the guitar part is he keeps changing the chords he uses for the one, because he almost always comes back to, or always, I think. But as he's going through, like on the second and third verse, he uses this voicing for the D chord, which is, if you look at it, it's part of this 4th fret, 2nd fret, 3rd fret, and it's like he's taking a C chord and sliding it up till he gets a D, and he's just using these 2 notes of it. Because that's what it sounds like to my ears when I'm trying to figure out what's going on the scratchy record. And so he's brushing on his upper thumb note when he's alternating the bass. He's brushing with his thumb on those 2 notes. So that's how he starts off the 2nd and 3rd verse. And then he he does something like this with the fourth verse, where he's doing that train whistle lick at the same, with both notes at the same time, and then adding his pinky on at the 7th fret, while the thumb is alternating like that. And then for the 5th verse, and again, this is one of those things where when you watch people play this in an acoustic context, this is sort of part of that big, a specific part of the arrangement that almost everybody grabs and does. And basically using an A chord shape, like this A, if you think of this A shape, just basic open A shape, and then pinky on top, and then slide it all the way up to D, so A, B, C, C sharp, D, and D7. So he alternates the thumb, and so the thumb is now doing the low string, and then all the way up at the 7th fret on the 4th string. So that's a way to, that's how he sort of orchestrates or builds it as he's going through the song, which is cool. So once you're playing the song, you might try. I love playing in open in drop D because there are a lot of nice things on this G. All those kinds of licks. There's just different things you can do if you were going to sort of take it in a more guitar instrumental way, or just look at this as, oh, here's a way to get familiar with playing in drop D, and then what are some other things I can do. It affords you the ability to do some of those other things. Because you've got these two open strings, Blind Willie takes advantage of by going up here, going up here. That means that you've got, when you're on the D, which is a lot of the time, your left hand is particularly free because you don't have to hold down any part of the chord. You can apply the chord with these notes. So there's a lot to be done in that drop D, and just as far as a place to play blues, there's a lot of room and a lot of things to try. But the Statesboro Blues is a good jumping off point, and so if you check out that arrangement of the first chorus, that'll get you a long way into just figuring out the landscape of what Blind Willie's doing, and you can kind of take it from there. So for True Fire and the blues song Genealogy project, I'm David Hamburger.